This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Dream Power Radio. This is the place where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. I think I've been intrigued with magic my entire life. When I was a kid, I met a magician and got a good slap on the hand when I tried to look into his pocket to see how he came up with his tricks. And in my days of writing young adult novels, I even made one of my heroines, and of course, the boy she sought, amateur magicians. But even then, I saw this type of magic as make-believe, a trick of the eyes. In fact, as we all know, another word for magic is illusion. So that's why I was a bit surprised when Tarot Master Sasha Graham, a previous guest on this program, called one of her books The Magic of Tarot. To me, tarot holds key truths, and I know she believes that as well and doesn't see it as anything make-believe at all. So what does she mean by the magic of tarot, and how may we be benefiting by it? Let's find out. Welcome back to Dream Power Radio, Sasha.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure, but I want to get right to it. So what do you mean by the magic of tarot?
When I talk about the magic of tarot, what I'm talking about is the entire world of possibility that opens up around you when you open up a deck of tarot cards and start working with them in like a very positive and enchanted way.
And you actually say that this magic has its own set of rules, though. So can you talk about that?
It does. It does. So, and when we talk about something like magic, I think that there's a lot of other words. I think a lot of people actually are using magic in their lives, a lot of very successful people that wouldn't necessarily call themselves magicians, but these people, right? Because you kind of can't look away from them. They look as if they've swallowed the moon, and so magic is really about diving into that kind of energetic field or energetic river where you're kind of like in alignment with who you are authentically. And that authentic alignment in the way that you kind of bring yourself to everything that you do in your life aligns with the expanding energy of the universe. That is magic. And the reason that tarot is so helpful is because it's literally like a roadmap. It's kind of like you can check in and kind of take a really objective look at your life, at your choices, at where you're going. It's kind of like a sounding board. And the deeper you move into your tarot practice, you rapidly discover that you're not necessarily reading the cards alone. And artists and poets and painters and actors understand this, right? When we're in creation mode, it's not just us. And the magic is that space with which envelops us when we're doing that. And whoever or whatever that other hand is up to you to name and decide and discover what that might be for yourself.
I know. I love that it's all about possibilities, because possibilities are endless, which means that you have the whole world to decide.
At your fingertips. And if you look at the nature of the material world, it is endless. If you sat and decided to sort of contemplate a rose in your garden for 10 minutes, the more you focus on it, the more you discover and the deeper you go, and you realize it's not just what you see on the surface. There's more depth, and that's a great thing about the tarot is and storytelling. It helps you create depth and new understandings in what's in front of you and how you respond to it.
Yeah, and you mentioned that word storytelling, and I want to get into it because you do say that tarot is storytelling.
It absolutely is storytelling. And it doesn't matter what sort of a tarot reading you're either giving or getting. You might sit down in front of someone who's going to predict what's going to happen to you. They're going to tell that to you in the form of a story. Everything in our life is storytelling. And there's two storytellers, right? There's the internal voice inside of our head, that voice where we're constantly like the internal self, that's storytelling. And then the external voice that you and I are using right now as we're communicating with one another. And so the entire suit of swords, right? There's 15 cards in the tarot deck that are devoted specifically to the way that that we narrate what's happening to us, the way that we understand and how we make the story inside of our head to make sense of our life and our world. So it helps you sort of start to examine, like, what stories am I telling? How am I talking to myself? And that's where you suddenly discover, well, if I can enhance or change the way I'm telling my story, I can really literally change my life.
Which is just amazing that we can actually do that. I want to get back to the actual tarot cards themselves, because they are symbolic of this magic that is possible for us. The cards, they all have the same characters. They, the major arcana with their characters and minor arcana with the suits and everything. One thing I've always been curious about, though, is why are there so many different decks?
So thank you for bringing up that the structure of a traditional tarot deck never changes. And that's a really wonderful thing, because it is that structure that's like a skeleton that never really alters, so that it fits perfectly into so many different things. And you always know kind of what you're getting. There are hundreds of thousands of different kinds of tarot decks on the market, which is great, because if you're just learning tarot, you want to get a deck that you're beguiled by the art. So if you're into Shakespeare, there's Shakespeare tarot. If you're into fairies, there's a million fairy decks. Like any kind of aesthetic, art style, theme, pop culture, television show. I think a Stranger Things tarot deck just came out. Like anything that you're into, chances are you can find a tarot deck with that vibe, with that artwork. It's kind of like the clothing, right, that tarot deck puts on. Underneath all of our clothes, our bodies, right, we're all very similar to, if we're fortunate to have 2 arms, 2 legs, like we're all kind of built the same, no matter what we choose to put on top of ourselves. With tarot structure, it's exactly the same thing. So you may be using like a Game of Thrones tarot deck, but the underlying structure and all of the magical esoteric stuff embedded inside of that remains the same.
Okay. So if you're new to it and you're deciding to pick a deck, you just really kind of go with your gut.
100%. I was just having this conversation this morning with a friend, and she was like, "How do I know?" And I said, tarot is it's a relationship. And so the same way that, like, when you meet someone and you're like, oh, I really kind of vibe and like this person, like I want to get to know them more. That's the kind of feeling you should have when a deck sparks your interest. If you're in a bookstore or looking at decks online, you'll know it's that internal spark of like, ooh, I want to see more of this. That's what you want to follow. And that's the deck you should purchase and start working with immediately.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a show about dreams, as I like to say at the beginning, and there are quite a few similarities between tarot reading and dream work. For example, something that all dream workers use to help them remember their dreams and to work their dreams is to keep a dream journal. One thing you also recommend to people who are trying to understand what they see in their own readings is to keep a tarot journal. So what constitute a tarot journal, and what kind of things would you put in it?
So a tarot journal, and I always kind of preface this by saying, I feel like there tend to be 2 types of people in the world, the journalers and the non-journalers, right? So I think that some people who are non-journalers or don't love to sit down and write for 45 minutes, when inspiration strikes. Let me just say straight away that a tarot journal can be as simple as like a list of like keywords so that you remember what happened when you looked at a card or you want to record something. So a tarot journal can be super duper simple. And really, it is just a record of an experience that you had with the card. Pulling a single card a day is a wonderful way to kind of get familiar, because 78 cards can feel very overwhelming when you first open them up and want to start playing with them and working with them. But it's a slow process, and it's a never-ending journey, the same way the dream interpretation is. So you might want to have something that's just about pulling a card a day and what strikes you about the card. Often people in tarot journals will literally sketch a card, and that's a wonderful wonderful thing to do, even if you're not an artist, because there's a lot of secret symbolism embedded specifically in the more occult decks. So if you're sketching the card, you're going to start discovering things you didn't see at first. And also, it is a form of meditation. So you're moving into the energy of that card because there is archetypal energy behind each of the 78 cards. You could keep a journal of readings that you do for other people. You could, perhaps you're doing like magic spells with tarot, and you might want to write down, this is what I did, and this is how I arranged my ritual and my intention, and then this is what happened. So it really, tarot journals, like dream journals, I would imagine, really become a record not only of your experience with the cards or with your dreams, but also kind of an imprint of where you were at that particular time in your life. So they're wonderful to have as reference to look back on, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, and just kind of see how far you've come.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you talked about sketching the tarot, because that's another part of dream work, is to make a sketch or a picture of the dream. And because that can give you insights that you might not normally see. And I always have this running argument with some of my dream worker friends who are total advocates in drawing the dream, because I'm a terrible artist. I always say that, my stick figures look like stick figures. And they said, it doesn't matter. Stick figures work. It works great. And so I imagine the same thing with tarot. Just you put down what is in your heart, what you feel. And
yes. And it's also, so one of the great things about reading a tarot card is that it takes all of that noise in your head and gives you a focus point so that you can examine an issue in a new way. What you're saying about even drawing stick figures and like very abstract symbolism to describe your very complex dream is giving you a doorway into exploring that dream in a way you might not have done analytically if you were telling a story about the dream, so that you get to approach the experience that you had in a new way. So yeah, it's not about being a great artist. It's about understanding the experience you had and why it's meaningful.
I have one more question to ask you that's specifically related to dreams and how you can work with tarot to help you understand your dreams, because I learned something from you that I never really knew. You have a technique of using tarot to help get insight into where your dream is coming from, which is called the dream auriculum, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mm-hmm. So tell me about this and the formula you use for figuring this out, because I think this was just totally fascinating to me when I saw this.
Yeah. So, and just, again, I'm a huge fan of dreams as well. And I love using tarot as a doorway into everything. So there's this fun numerological thing that you can do after you've had a dream. Or, you could even go back to recurring dreams. We have those recurring dreams. You could also kind of like figure it out. But you numerologically reduce the date, the time, the age you were at, and the day of the week when you had the dream. And you reduce it down to a number that aligns with the major arcana, right? So there's 22 major arcana cards. And then with that, you kind of use that card as a doorway of understanding what the dream was about, or an energy within you from which that dream sprang. So it's just a new way, an interesting way of diving into your subconscious self and try and figure out. And it's incredibly helpful, because it brings a whole new wealth of information to the dream that you had in a way you can understand it.
Oh, that is so true. I just have one technical question about it. Yes. So you say you assign a number for the day that you have the dream. Let's say if you go to sleep Sunday night, is it Sunday you have the dream or Monday?
Yeah, that's a good. Well, so I would say most of us tend to, unless we wake up from a dream immediately, I feel like most of us tend to wake up from our sleeping, like having our dreams right before we wake up for the day. So I would count the after midnight, you know what I mean? Unless I knew it was definitely a before midnight wake up, or a daydream where I was, where you were napping. But that's a great question.
Okay, we're going to talk so much more about tarot, but it's time for a short break. We are speaking with Sasha Graham on Dream Power Radio, and we'll be right back. When is a car not a car?
when it shows up in your dreams. Cars are one of the most common dream symbols. If you don't know why you're dreaming about cars or any image, it can leave you confused or scared. But that dream could be a solution to a pressing problem, or an insight into a solution that's been bugging you for years. Go to my website and sign up for a complimentary discovery session, and I'll help you understand why a dream is a terrible thing to waste. Go to thedreamcoach.net for more information.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking about tarot with author and tarot expert, Sasha Graham. So, Sasha, you say that if you're learning tarot and how to do it, one of the best methods to get into it is to pull a card a day. What can you get from doing this?
It's kind of unbelievable, actually, what you can kind of gain from doing a single card a day. And it literally takes under 5 minutes to do. But I often like to say the most profound things in life often come from the simplest things. We tend to overcomplicate. So a single card a day is, and it's a practice I still actually do after all of these decades with the cards. I still pull a card every single day. But if you're just learning, at any point in the morning when you're feeling like kind of cozy and centered before you begin your day, maybe you're drinking your coffee, your tea, just kind of clear your mind. Just clear your mind and think about the day that's coming up ahead of you. And I like to say, like, an easy thing to kind of focus on is what can I pay attention to have like a great day, or you'll know, right? If you have something coming up, like you have a job interview, what can I like focus on? What can give me a little bit of clarity? And then shuffle and pull a single card. And then just allow whatever comes up. How does the image impact you? How does the color impact you? Maybe you notice the number of a card. It's the number 2, and 2 is like your angel number. What is the message from the card? And just sit there for a minute. Do not worry about getting it wrong. And just jot down what you get. And then go about your day, right? And you might keep the card out so you can see it, or you might like just leave it next to your bed. And then at the end of your day, before you go to bed, after you brush your teeth, just check back in, take a look at the image again, and see what and see how something in your day may be aligned with that card, or maybe you found yourself embodying that card, or someone else did. It is so simple. It is so clear. To just clear your mind, ask a question, and a card a day, as well as starting to really get to know the cards on an intimate level, it gives you an opportunity for clarity. So I always say, if there's something that you want in your life, start asking the cards every morning. If you ask the same question every morning for something you need an answer to, believe you me, you're going to get that answer. But you just have to show up and ask and pull a card. It's the simplest thing in the world. It'll change your life.
Mm-hmm. And it is. So you are saying that it's best to do this in the morning before you start your day or get into all the activities of the day.
I think so. I think morning is a great time. That's not necessarily good if people work at night and like their mornings maybe begin at 7 p.m. That's when they wake up. The reason I think the morning is good, is a wonderful time, is one, you've just come out of that subconscious dream state, right? So you're still kind of in that space. You're kind of more open to the unconscious. 2, I just think that the power of clearing your mind, just in having even like 30 seconds of contemplative silence and thinking about what's coming down the road as you leap into your day, that in and of itself is a very powerful thing. And I just know that my morning coffee is sort of sacrosanct. Like, it's just, so I just can't imagine a better time. But people are different. So the most important thing with tarot and magic is to find what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
That would be important.
And that's always the truth. It's what works for you. And you also say that if you're just starting out, you don't have to use the whole deck. Like, just start with the major arcana, for instance.
Yes, yes. And the biggest impediment to anyone, the biggest challenge for people starting to work with the tarot is, am I getting it wrong? Am I wrong? Am I saying the right thing? Let me look at a book. And the fact of the matter is, you're in charge of your learning. So when you were in kindergarten, they didn't throw Tolstoy at you and expect you to like read it perfectly, right? Like baby steps, baby steps. So it can be, for a certain person, it might be really helpful to only use the 22 major arcana. Perhaps you only start one week and only read and shuffle the 4 aces or 4 kings, or only female cards. Like you can pull apart the deck, play with it the way that you want, and say that somebody out there is working maybe with their grandmother's deck, and maybe it's an old occult deck, and maybe the death card freaks you out, and take out the cards that scare you. Don't, if something freaks you out or is challenging inside the tarot, put that to the side until you're ready to integrate it. Like, hopefully none of us get thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool when it's time to learn to swim. And the same thing with tarot, like be gentle with yourself. It's a lifelong, never ending, beautiful relationship and process. So take it easy and take it slow, and you'll, I think, move forward faster.
And one of the other things that you just also mentioned too is asking questions of the card, or asking questions before you pull the card. Is there a way to phrase a question that gets you better results, or ways that you shouldn't ask questions?
Debbie, thank you for asking that question. So important. And how you phrase the question is really important. So you never want to ask the cards, is something going to happen 100% yes or no? So when you're asking a question like, when am I going to get the raise? When am I going to find love? How come my life sucks? Why can't I stop eating pizza? None of these questions, even if you got an answer, would necessarily be helpful to you, other than just sort of soothing yourself in the moment. You want to be proactive with tarot. So questions of, how can I find the greatest romantic relationship of my life? What can I do to attract that person I'm like madly in love with? Then you flip a card and suddenly you're like, oh, this card says maybe I should focus on my sensual energy today. And so with that, like you might go get dressed in a different way and catch that person's eye. So questions about how or what can I do? And it really comes down to asserting personal responsibility, that we're in charge of our life. We're in charge of our choices, right? Things aren't happening randomly. And we all know like what would happen if we walked into a crossroad of traffic, right? So predictive tarot is not necessarily helpful, but it can put us on the right path for how we can approach things. So how questions are wonderful. How and what can I do? How can I do it?
Yes. Very good. And it's just like with dream work also. If you're asking the questions, you do it in a way that isn't judgmental and that gives you more of an the possibility for a more open-ended question than just this, whatever. But we will go on from there. One of the fun things about tarot, I mean, there's so many things you could do with it, but one thing that you also talk about is using tarot to create spells. So I know when we think about the word spell, we're thinking of this witch in a cauldron and coming up with magic weirdness and stuff. So tell me about spells in tarot.
Well, the thing that I love about magic and spells is that it is a highly, highly creative act. And the minute that you kind of jump into any sort of magic, whether it's candle magic, traditional magic, you realize magic is very crafty and it's really what you want it to be. So if you want to put a bubbling cauldron and throw frogs in and wear a classic, like a cloak and a witch's hat, more power to you. You know what I mean? Spells and rituals are sensual. It is exactly like the world's religions, right? You walk into a cathedral or a temple, 9 times out of 10, you're going to smell incense, hear music, smell flowers, right? It's about magic, and ritual is about opening up the senses. It's about preparing yourself not only to do magical work, but perhaps get inspiration and to commune with something greater than yourself. The great thing about tarot is that literally it's visual and everything is there within the deck. So you can call to the four corners, the four elements, or the four suits, literally put them around you, and suddenly you're creating sacred space. And within that space, then you can work your magic. Now, almost any witch worth her salt will tell you that in order to cast a spell, you have to visualize the outcome or what you kind of want around that spell. And so again, tarot acts as shorthand because tarot is visual and symbolic. So you can choose a card or cards that represent not only something perhaps that you want to bring into your life, but the end result. So you then not only work with that image, which, as I said earlier, is archetypal. So it has its own energy kind of inside of it. The same way an herb or a tree carries its own archetypal energy, so does tarot. So you're automatically accessing that as well. And it just becomes this really simple way to cast a magic spell or to create sacred space around you. It's incredibly convenient, incredibly portable, fits in your pocketbook. You know?
Oh, give me an example of a spell that you could do using tarot.
Oh, okay. So let's say you're looking for love. And one of my favorite places to traditionally cast magic is on my kitchen table, because the kitchen is already, like, I feel like cookbooks and spell books, you know, it's all the same stuff. It's giving you the instructions of how to get what you want, whether it's a cake or a big, sexy, delicious lover. So let's just say that you want to bring love into your life. You could take a lovely cleansing bath in salt water to just kind of cleanse yourself, prepare yourself for the work ahead. You would go maybe to your kitchen table. You would have the four aces, the four elements set aside, because you always would love to. It's always a great idea to open up the space with kind of requests to the four elements. And you could just call to the card. And so you begin working your way around the table saying, I call to the east, to the suit of cups to aid me in my work. And you make your way around the circle. And then perhaps you sit there then at your table with your candles blazing, a little bit of incense, and start focusing on the lover's card, right? And start moving deeper into the lover's card, and then start thinking about what kind of love that you'd like to bring into your life. And maybe you journal about it, you write about it, and you open yourself up and put the call out to the universe and say, you know, please bring this to me. And then you end it, and then you go counterclockwise and you thank the energies for being with you. And then the best thing you can do after you cast a magic spell is forget you ever cast it, and just know that you made the call. And if it works and the spell comes true, it was meant to be. And if it doesn't, it's a good thing, because it wasn't meant to be. And I often say to people in classes, you know, could you imagine if everything we ever wanted came true? You know, you'd still be married to a doofus guy, like from high school, right? Like, we don't always know what's best for ourselves. And thank goodness so many things haven't, come true that you once upon wanted. So the universe, the creative principle, gives us that delay. So if a spell doesn't work, it really wasn't meant to be. And then you rearrange and try again for something new.
Can someone use tarot to cast a bad spell on somebody else?
Well, of course, it's like a gun or a sword or, a good priest or a bad priest. Like, anything can be used malevolently. Anything can be used with bad intention. And there's plenty of readers, we've all heard the stories about people who get, have been like bamboozled out of $600,000 by a tarot reader who kind of had, or a psychic. So yes, of course, there's anything with ill intent can be done through, or tarot can be used for that. The same way, you would use a gun or your legal team to go out and do really awful things. So tarot is no different than anything else.
You have an event coming up soon, so tell us about it.
Oh, I'm so excited. So yes, so this is a virtual online 3-day event that anyone anywhere in the world can participate in, and it's called Tarot Palooza. And it is a tarot-centric event with I would say a collection of the world's greatest teachers, like of the moment right now in the world of tarot. And so I think there's about 12 of us gathered up, and we're each presenting a class on Saturday, October 22nd. We each do like an hour-long class, and there's a lunch break. There's also a VIP, like really fun kind of Friday night opening for the whole weekend. And then there's a special conversation that you can take part of on Sunday, which is going to be a conversation between myself and Barbara Moore, who is the acquisitions editor of tarot for Llewellyn Worldwide, which is, I would say, the country's biggest tarot publisher and distributor. And so we're going to talk about her decades-long experience, not only working with the tarot, but also having a heavy hand in creating most of the decks that you're seeing in the stores that are out there. So it's really this extraordinary experience. There's all different levels of participation. You can get a recording of it. You can join live. You can do just Saturday, but it's called Tarot Palooza, and it's happening October 21, 22, and 23. And I just think it's the only thing out there that's like it. And it's so much fun. I've done them in previous years, and people love it.
And how can people find out about it?
So people can either Google Tarot Palooza just randomly, or you can go to my website, sashagraham.com, and on my event page, you can find a link and you can click right through to all of the information and registration.
Wonderful. Well, Sasha, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
It was such a pleasure. Thanks for having me. This was great.
Okay. We've been speaking about the magic of tarot with Sasha Graham. Hope you've enjoyed today's program. If so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.